Good morning, dear friends. Good morning. Welcome back to our 5th Faculty Development Workshop, co-organized by Lumina College and Hong Kong U's Faith and Science Collaborative Research Forum. This is the 5th and the last workshop, our second series on the future of business in a technological age. Thanks, Mike, for arranging such a good place at Hong Kong U campus for us. So we start by inviting Dr. Winnie Fung to give us an introduction and summary of our 4th section and session of homework, just to help us to recap what we have done so far. Winnie, please.
So glad to see everyone for the to help us, I guess, refresh our memory. Give a very brief 5-minute summary of what Dr. Liu and T talked about last time. So last session was on technology and the global order of business. We have Dr. Peter Liu from Human Dynamics as the speaker, and Mr. Denton Fong from Future as the respondent. So Dr. Liu started off by saying that in reality, research shows us that people do not really want to know the future. We're talking about future of technology and future of business. But people do not really want to know the future because they feel that either the future is too remote or they cannot do anything to change it. Okay? But this is not true. Peter Drucker said the important thing is to identify the future that is already happened, the future that has already happened, which means the future is already happening here and now. So there's actually something or some opportunities for us here to do something about the future since it's already happening. Dr. Liu then briefly talked about community and the future, how we go from traditional to organizational to network community, about network in the future, how networks redefine ownership. And today there's something more important than ownership, and that's access. And we also see the democratizing of information and knowledge. And then he also briefly talked about technologies in the future. Some people call this the 4th industrial revolution, where we have AI, robotics, big data analytics. And then after setting the scene, Dr. Liu brought in his own research from the food and agricultural industry and talked about the injustices and damaging effects that are brought about by big corporations, large commercial firms that squeeze out small farms through mergers and acquisitions. The small farms get squeezed out because the large commercial firms have very high productivity, and then the small farms simply cannot compete. So this leaves us with an oligopoly in the farming industry, with just a handful of firms dominating the entire input supply of seeds, fertilizers, and herbicides. So this leads to injustices in both the producer and consumer systems. So what is a better and more biblical order of business? That's kind of the question that Dr. Liu left us with. Dr. Liu gave 3 suggestions. First, the idea of shared economy. So before, technology used to be confined within a company, but now with the democratization of technology, everything should be an share. A shared economy is more biblical than a simple capitalism or communism economy. And second, the importance of slowing down. I think some of us here will remember Dr. Liu's example. So able people, smart people, richer countries have to slow down and not chase productivity. They need to slow down and be willing to walk with their poor, slower counterparts. And third and finally, we should not just care about GDP. That if we want to come up with a measurement to measure social and economic performance and well-being, we need to think about human well-being, environmental stewardship, fairness and justice, etc. So after Dr. Liu's talk, we have T. As a respondent, T talked about fintech and edtech, how fintech is democratizing investing, and how, comparatively speaking, the education sector is grossly under-digitized. So we talked about how less than 3% of global education expenditure is actually on technology. So since T's background is in edtech, he shared with us how edtech can contribute to the future of education, such as personalizing education, allowing for shared economy, helping students learn cognitively, affectively, get a or other psychomotors. But he cautioned the group that technology can only address the question of what and how. What do we learn? How do we learn? But it cannot address the question of why. Why do we want to learn? Why do we need education? And the why question is a question that only faith or having a Christian understanding of who we are and what we are made for can answer. And afterwards, we have a very lively discussion on this. So that's a 5-minute recap of what we had last time. And I'll leave the time for our
Okay. Thanks, Wendy, for your nice report. So we can move on now. Since our two speakers today, the organizer of this series of faculty development workshop, Dr. Leung Tai and also Dr. Mike Brownnutt, we don't need to give them any souvenir today. But instead, we are looking forward to the very good sharing and concluding remark. And again, I don't have to introduce Dr. Leung Tai, the founding president of Lumina College and the mastermind behind our two series of faculty development workshops. And of course, the best speaker to conclude this series of our workshops. Leung Tai's topic today is Un-commodifying the World. Let's welcome Leung Tai with a big applause. Leung Tai. Yes.
Now, good morning. We broke a record this morning by starting earlier than specified. That is a good sign. So we are more enthusiastic about what we are trying to do. Right? Now, Mike is going to give an overall summary of the 5 sessions. But to begin with, I just want to recap one sentence for each session so that we will flow into the Un-commodifying the World. Winnie Fong, Dr. Winnie Fong, first session, consumerism and growth. The key question is, are we defined solely as a consumer? That is identity crisis. If we were simply a consumer, reduced into consumer, who are we? The second session is disruption of technology, right? Fourth degree industrial revolution and all the exponential new technology. Does it provide opportunity or more threats to the ongoing logic of technology? When you have something new, which is exponentially more powerful, are we facing an opportunity or a bigger crisis? The third one is, now in terms of growth and consumption, that we mess up the planet. Stop from here, zero impact. Doesn't make sense. We have to recultivate the land and re-nourish nature, right? Otherwise, it's still suicidal. And then the last one, Peter, Dr. Winnie Fong has summarized the global order of business. It seems to me that all the purpose, objectives, matrix, GDP, and all the other things, the whole framing of growth and business and technologies is like a train off the track. Right? And this morning, Un-commodifying, commodification of the world, commodification of life, commodification of everything, seems to me the apex of the human drama and the human tragedy. Like C.S. Lewis has written a book called The Abolition of Man. That we try to create so many things and rationally arrive something that we reduce ourselves to nothing. That is the essence of what we are trying to do this morning, right? Let me try this. Okay. All right. So we have to do people on, right?
This is
all this technology. Yeah. You're right. Okay. Okay. Very good. Now, what is commodification? Do you have a nanny, Soli? Or your mother take care of you? Or do you have a nanny? The best nanny. Transformation of goods, services, ideas, and people into commodities or objects of trade. In other words, we have a price tag. Hong Kong is very ingenious. Same food, different time, different price tag, right? The same food, different time, different price. Hong Kong is extremely smart in this game, commodification, right? When it rains, then our umbrellas will raise price. Anyway, objects of trade, commodification. In the old time, we have spices and teas and silver and opium and samurai. Samurai in the Japanese tradition was attached to the house. They are part of the heritage. And then because of the decline of the shoguns, then they lost their owners. They become wandering samurai. We call it ronin. And then they have no master, so they have to sell the trade as is, with the sword and martials. So samurai in decline. Sorry about Joseph. Lau Zhongtou at one time was the chief editor of Ming Pao, commented on Joseph and the Egyptian, because God has given the Pharaoh a dream, 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows. And then after 7 fat cows, the lean cows ate up, right? The fat cows. And then Joseph helped Pharaoh to store up food so that all the people in the land trade for food. And then when they run out of money, what do? Huh? They trade what for food? Land for food. They trade the land for food. And that sowed the seed of hatred of the Israelites by some people. That's what Lau Zhongtou interpreted. He took out all the land because we have the food. Anyway, it's not for me to comment. I'm not a theologian as Professor Yip. But anyway, you see this kind of commodification is working. And then we'll talk more about imperialization, colonization, and cultural imperialism. But basically, it's all around us that we detach certain people, certain value into an object of trade. Right? Next one. Today, we commodify almost everything. Reproduction technology, right? Then you can genetic analyze the fetus, the embryo, whether it meets certain specification. It's not good enough, then you eject it, right? And you have abortion. Terrible. We call it gene counseling. Have you heard of that? Commodify. Through technology, we are surrogate mother. I can do the pregnancy, the labor, and then the birth. I rent my womb for a certain price tag. All right?
Not yours.
Commodification of education, online distribution. Now we have the good notes. Every big university is trying to find some, we call it far-sight facilitators, so that their content can be generated and make money through this remote thing. And Phoenix, the University for Commerce, for profit, mushrooms. Commodification and ranking. Ranking is what? An assessment tool. Examination is an assessment tool. Initially, it's a technology. Help us to assess what we have learned, right? And then it becomes an objective of study, studying for examination, for ranking university. And then become the value. It defines us. You are the grade A student. You are the ranked #1 university. Suddenly, commodification. commodification of service, culture, package in certain tourism. Jiang Weimao is very good in trying to put different remote areas in China into packages and festivals and shows and AVs and souvenirs. Culture, commodification, right? Relationship. When you get married, you sign it. When we divorce, how should we divide the assets? So you come to a contract of marriage, and then you anticipate if we were having one day facing divorce, what should we do? Transaction, commodification, evaluation, patency, and all that. Right? So we try to commodify everything. That is the phenomenon today. Now, there are four forces that encourage this and speed up the process of commodification. Do you know what film is this one? Have you seen this one? Shining. Stanley Kubrick. Anyway, the economic logic of market values, economic logic of market values, marketing. Is China mainland China, a socialist, communist country, or a market economy and more capitalistic country in terms of centralized and then the hybrid market force? What kind of system is this? T, what do you think? It's smart.
Hard to say.
Hard to say. So it is some kind of hybrid mixture, right? Okay, contaminated socialism. And then we have the technological logic, which Mike will talk more for efficiency, for rationality, effectiveness, for wholesale autonomy, and so on. Logic, and we'll talk more. Globalization. Globalization, even today, we have new colonialism that from the political, military, economics, and cultural, but basically for gain, for market gain. And then the postmodern, immediate gratification and seeking for the sublime, for the instantaneous. And those encourages further commodification. We don't have time to enter into all this, and I'm not an expert in this area, so we learn together, all right? Now, biblical examples. In the book of Judges, chapter 17, talking about a young man, a young Levite from Bethlehem. He did not feel at home. He felt homelessly at home. Isn't what we are doing today? Feeling homelessly at home, not very comfortable in his hometown. So he tried to migrate to find a place. And then he became a house priest because he was a young Levite of a certain family. And when the tribe of Dan people came along and kidnapped him, do you want to be a house priest or a tribal priest? Do you work for a local company or an IBM international transnational company? and then they asked him a question: who are you? What are you doing? How much you earn? What is your annual package? Fringe benefits. So he has a price tag. So when the people of Dan came to attack that family and took away things, where this young Levite was standing, he was standing outside of the house. He sneaked out the door and stand outside of the house. I don't belong. Very subtly, you become, and then you have a new master. Commodification of Levites, priesthood. And then Joseph, of course, sold as human trafficking for money, for certain value, right? And actually, so because of jealousy. Now, we have some historical context for commodification, especially in the West. From the 5th century to the 16th century, basically we can call it the Christian centuries. Christianity dominated. The kings and the queens' coronation need the approval of the church. The church is very powerful. Corporate. And then we have the Reformation, right? Priesthood of all believers. So individuals are very important. I don't need a priest for confession. Right? And then we have the vernacular language. In John Hus in Prague, 100 years before Martin Luther, suggested the German can have their own Bible. We don't need Latin Bible, vernacular language. So this nationalism, and then the secular states, and later on democracy. While the evangelicals have the biblical literalism. You take the Bible verse literally. Then eventually, the world secularized after the Renaissance, and the church, the modern theology, trying to reveal in terms of critical and historical, and then wipe out all those miracles and the spiritual dimension, and then Christianity, in some aspect, became pietistic and experiential, personal, otherworldly, right? And then the world is fighting for rights, for citizenship, for democracy. I have a say. Okay, this is my body. This is my rights, my control, everything. Okay, so this is the context that gives the breeding ground for commodification. And then we have the theological context, which I mentioned a little bit. Modern theology against orthodox, through the scientific, critical, and historical development of theology, scrutinize the Bible. And then the Western missionaries brought in the democratic civilization together with Christianity. And some people term it imperialistic evangelism. Even today, when you evangelize the Chinese people in the mainland, they always accuse us as missionaries, as bandits with the imperialists, because all the unequal treaties, always with a final term, the missionaries can evangelize freely in those cities. And then we have eventually come up something of a prosperity gospel, success in economic terms. And success is moral. When you are rich, it's blessings of God because you have done something right. The poor, either lazy or unfortunate, and they are cursed, and it's not good. So economic has moral implications, theological. And the root of that could come from positive psychology, which Dr. Grace Koo in Lumen College mentioned positive psychology, positive thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, and then you have success, and then church growth, numbers, and buildings, and then we have the New Age human potential movement. Those are all encouraging for commodification. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. And then today, globalization enhanced that. Through technology, the world is getting smaller. We, human, as rational subject for personal gain, and then we are consumers, and then we can possess more things, which is supposed to give us happiness, which is the ultimate goal, to seek happiness through possession, through consumption, and that is defined in economic terms. And globalization started with cartography, the invention of maps, and then modern technology, internet, and globalization, and continued this new colonialism. The Sino-American trade war is all about hegemony, about petrodollar, about technology competition, about 5G, and Trump is the best promoter for Huawei. And I heard that England, 95% of 5G framework can be open for Huawei, only the 5% core. So we have the economic theory dominating, education for economy, government for economy, religion for economy. My God, everything is for trade and have a price tag, and we are reduced to something, right? Through globalization. And then commodification of Christian education, right? Or most companies has a mission statement, right? We talk about branding. Even in the international conference, the last session of Lumina International Conference, we have the major speakers and also the floor, and they talk about branding of Christian higher education. My God! And then we have the 4 spiritual laws, when we evangelize, and then when you introduce yourself, which denomination, which ideological position, which behavioral standards, your statement, faith statement. People always ask, what is the Lumina statement of faith? They want to compare. And then when students enter into a master program, they have the undergraduate, so we have to have them to be evaluated by a supposed educational assessor of whether it's a legitimate bachelor, and can they transfer a certain master program. So all the subjects, all the classes, all the courses are divorced from the context, divorced from the teacher, divorced from the participation in chemistry. It's just become a curriculum, and what is the content and the syllabus, and whether they be transferable. That's what we are doing, right? Reductionistic. Everything is changed. And then you are either belong to the group of change of heart. People will say change of heart, change of individual conversion, then you change the world. Some camps say no, you need structure, social justice. You need the structural change, and then to change the world. You have 2 camps, right? Personal piety versus social change. We call liberal and then conservative. And then the Bible study. Bible study can have many, many ways, but then the university celebrated the inductive Bible study. What does it say? What does it mean? What does it mean to me? And then the context, the cultural context, the richness, the literary, the artistic, is all secondary. I was brought up in this inductive Bible study fellowships, and the psychological and so on, and wrote memories and laws. Give it, can you say your faith, can you tell me your school in 1 sentence, in 3 words? Coherency, creativity, culture making, commitment. You have to reduce everything into a nutshell, bullet points, abstracts, and so on, right? That's what we are doing. And the church, either you're boxed in or you're being prophetic. And we have a choice. And then in the general academics arena, there's a guy called Anderson. He introduced the Commodification index. There are 3 types of welfare capitalism. The US is liberal. Germany is corporatist and statist. I don't know how to say. Sweden, social democratic. He compared different countries, whether women or individual is immune from market dependency. In other words, if Casey working at home, she will receive the same benefit as Mike working outside of the home. If the 2 salaries are comparable, even she works at home, then you have a high level of immunity of the market value. You understand what I say? If she receives nothing by working at home, then that society is highly market oriented. So you have to be entered into transactions and market in order to earn some benefit and welfare. So Sweden has the highest benefit for non-working outside people. America is highly attached to the market economy. And then the dichotomy between the 2 is very strong. So the index of commodification is that how the citizens' degree of immunization and market dependency. Individual and family can have socially acceptable standard of living independent of market participation. That's why he is trying to establish. Without market participation, still have a decent living. Is it good? Good for the children. And then he designed some matrix that The American, the liberal, the German, the corporatist, and the Swedish, the social democratic. Poverty and equality is low, medium, and high. Employment, some high, both are high. In Sweden and liberal, in America are both high, but the dichotomy is very high. And then gender and distribution and so on. So he approached commodification through this market participation and the welfare that can render some person have decent living without engaging in the market. Okay. Anyway, so just some index. And then today in the secular study, we have some commodification studies in the area of gender equality, inequality, environmental impact, social democracy. Now you want to have a social democracy, and yet you need to have labor participation. And there are some paradox and tension, and we cannot go too much into that. Now, today's topic is not about commodification. It's about un-commodifying the world. So I have to come to the what we call antidote. Is it antidote? the antidote to poison, right? Exodus historical narrative. This is interesting, huh? The modern Exodus through U-Haul. That the Egyptians asked the Israelites to have added value, less straw and more bricks, increase efficiency to the extent it breaks the back, and then they have to escape. And the reason for escape are twofold. One is injustice and pain and suffering, and second is to worship, because Pharaoh and the Egyptian god has an alternative godhead. So the Exodus is a story of un-commodification, that we cannot just simply a production machine. Remember Louis Mumford? We have read an article on the mega machine, slavery, pyramids and all that. Humans are slave, mega machine. Then we create all those gigantic projects, and human were reduced to nothing. Forgive me for being melancholic. Every time I pass Taiwan welcome store, Wai Hong, they have many long staircases and no escalator. So the young people with all the tattoos, heavy duty, all those soft drinks and everything to bring up the staircase is modern slavery. It's terrible. And I feel guilty when I buy things from that store. Anyway, so we have this un-commodification. And Paul's letter to Philemon. Philemon was the owner of a runaway slave called Onesimus. And Paul not trying to change the slavery system and structure. He just said, this guy has become a Christian, and now he's a brother, and he's serving me. So I'm going to ask him to return to you. Don't kill him, and don't imprison him, and don't let him continue to be slave, but give it back to me, to serve me, since you owe me in your faith and my teaching already. So Paul was trying to dismantle this commodity, a person as a slave, through the love of Christ and the higher principle. So those are some of the principles of commodification. Right? Theological logics. Sorry, I cannot block this. Theological logics of commodification. We are made in the image of God, and we cannot commodify people. When you talk to some less educated folks in Hong Kong, why do you want to have children? And they may say that one day when I get old, they will take care of me. But today suddenly they find it very difficult because they could not take care of themselves. So the formula doesn't work. So in a very subtle way, having children in a way is interesting. And then I ask some young people, why do you talk to your parents? No common topics. The things that I like, they despise, and the things that they like, I despise. So what does it mean? So how would your parents mean to you? Well, they're just like an EMT machine. When I need money, I just ask them for money. That's all. It's reality. So we commodify each other, image of God, bonding. Men and women become one. Today, when we have cloning, so we don't need men and women, right? So we have lesbians and homosexuals, and they can give birth to next generation through cloning. Bypass the embryonic organism. Okay. Bonding. Bonding with God, bonding with male and female, and then garden the land, safeguard, tolerate, and eat, and cultivate, and nurture. When John the Baptist was called to be the foreigners of Christ, to prepare in the wilderness, to smoothen the rough edges, and so on. And then we have covenant. What is covenant? In the biblical covenant, it follows the structure of the Hittite. First of all, you have two parties, and they swear an oath, right? God swear to himself, because there's no one to swear an oath. And then there's a historical clause. I brought you out of Egypt, all right? And then we have the command precept, command, and then blessings and curse. And then there's a media sign, the circumcision, and so on. Covenant. Today we seem have no covenant law. You remember Nehemiah, when his relatives from afar returned from Jerusalem, report to him in Persia. He had emigrated to Persia. He was the king's cupbearer, right? Nehemiah. And then reported the city of Jerusalem was in ruin, the city wall was broken, the city gate was all gone, fire on fire. Nehemiah prayed and identified himself before God as one of his people. That we broke the covenant, we forsaken you, but we pray for you, that you may redeem us. In a way, share destiny, right? What happened in 1984? What happened to the church? What happened to the church leaders? The Christian population in Hong Kong emigrated more than the general population. In Hong Kong, 1984, when signed the John Declaration, signed on British Declaration, the church leaders emigrated more than the general, much more in proportion than the general public. No shared destiny. And somehow, with some clear conscience, they went there, settled their parents, the children and the wives, and then returned back to Hong Kong to serve. Then we have family problems, astronomical, and so on. Covenant, shared destiny. Intergenerational bonding. In the Passover, you have to, every time, you have to, for the Jewish to remember the Passover, God leapt over. And in every month, in the Christian church, they always quote, when we break the bread, what I'm preaching to you, I'm paraphrasing. I know in Chinese how to recite those poems. Is in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 23. 我當日傳給你們的what I've preached to you， 原是從主領受的。I received from the Lord， 就是主耶穌俾埋的那嘢。When the night that Jesus was betrayed, he broke bread. So there's a story, there's a heritage. You see? My mother, when we were young, all the in-laws and the cousins, all the children, every day sitting next to her, and she would tell us stories, fairy tales, heritage, cultural heritage. Today, we don't have this kind of Timothy, remember Timothy? In your mother-in-law, and now to you, the faith, intergenerational faith. Holy Communion. The values in the intangible. David Harvey has written a book about the future of space. How a space become a place, become a home. Originally it's a space, three-dimensional space. And then when people do something and live there and then do something, become a place. Suddenly it's a place and then become a home. It takes time. And Hong Kong government doesn't know this. So they intend they distract out all those whole markets, type of markets, and then create some new market in some remote area without air conditioning and nobody travel there. The intangibles, memories, collective memories. We don't have that anymore. When I was in Canada, I was with my son-in-law, not son-in-law, what do you say? My nephew. And talk about Chinese history. And he says, you belong to the past and I belong to the future. Don't talk about history to me. In my faith, you belong to the past and I belong to the future. I say, good, that's futuristic mind. But one day, when you can handle history, then you become better. Memory, lost, collective amnesia, we lost all memories. Okay? So antidotes for commodification. We have the first session, we summarize Ivan Illich, convenient tools, collaborative, celebrative technology. Identity, very important. Identity, collective memory. Neighbors, love the neighbors. Relationship, communion, communication, community. Communication is not a transmission of information. It's a joining of lives. I vow, dialogue, listening. 21st century leadership is listening. Cultural heritage, context. Scott Peck has written a book called In Search of Stones. Stones have memory. Sedimentary rock, igneous rock. It has some history. You can tell, habitat, the context. I'll tell you a secret. One of the board members of Lumen College cornered us into some assessment tools and outcomes of classes, so that anybody teaching will have the same outcome. I say no. When so young people so and fighting try teaching the same class will be different outcome. So in a certain kind of standardization, conformity, so that we can control, no variation. Outcome, right? Outcome. Appreciation of the rituals, intangibles, and then when breakthrough and FES fellowship of evangelical students, when they split up after the movement get a certain size, and we sign an agreement that we are sister organizations. And some of the legal members, some of the lawyers in the board say, no use, it's irrelevant. Doesn't mean a thing in Hong Kong legally, it's nothing. I say something beyond legal, you see. So we have to sign an agreement. We are a sister organization. Well, it's not legal, it's not just economic, it's not, it's just a bonding. Can we do that? So we insist that we do that. And now I'm questioned by the tax department. We gave some loans to breakthrough and fellowship of evangelical students 3 years ago when we were finding the first endowment. They cornered us. What? How can you do that? Anyway, so intangibles, community, undefined, paradoxical, imaginative, holistic, all these are gone. We lost curiosity. And then John Wesley said, gain all you can, save all you can, give all you can. Most important, give all you can. Anyway, so these are my initial findings, and then we can learn together and be open for discussions. I'm not major in this area, just some thoughts. In summary, we come to a point of human history that we commodify everything. We objectify from God, from each other, from memory, from ourselves, from the intangibles. And that is sad. So, we can review community, review rituals. Every year, In our family, we have family day, family week. And then every anniversary, I brought my children and my wife to Hillview Hotel for a lunch buffet. So you create certain kind of intangibles. So those are important. Anyway, so any questions, any comments?
Now we shall move on to our second talk today. Again, I don't need to introduce to you our second speaker. Mike is hosting this workshop at the final workshop at Hong Kong U for us. Thank you for your great hospitality and the meal and the coffee too. So we welcome Mike with a big applause.
Cool. So, about 18 months ago, the first series of workshops that the Faith and Science Forum and Lumina collaborated on was Redeeming Technology, and I had the pleasure for that series of giving the opening talk. and so we sort of come, and my talk was then followed by Wing Tai. So we've come full circle in the chiastic sense where Wing Tai's given the penultimate talk and I now get to close it off. So this is it's really great to be here today. Thanks for all your involvement in this. Now, usually for the previous sessions, what we've done is we've had the main talk and then a respondent who responds to that talk. I, for this, am now going to sort of give a look back response to the last 5 months of talks in 25 minutes. So we're going to see what happens. Okay, so the question is 5 months on, what have we done? Wing Tai gave a sort of one-sentence overview of the last 4 talks. I now have 1 more talk to go, so I'm going to give a one-sentence overview of the last 5 talks. So here we go. And I was quite pleased, actually, noting Wing Tai's one-sentence overviews that there's quite a good deal of overlap between them. So that means that the speakers evidently made a clear point. So here we go. So session 1 was consumerism and growth, and one of the key ideas here was how we understand ourselves, how we define ourselves. Do we understand ourselves primarily as consumers? Do we understand ourselves primarily as generators of financial value? Do we understand ourselves as something else? And this was looking at our, in a sense, our identity was one of the key themes coming through here. Now, for those people who spoke who are here, and for those speakers who are watching on the video, I'm going to have to compress a whole lot of stuff. So if I miss what you liked as your key point, I'm sorry. If later I slightly misrepresent some of you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Okay, distraction of technology. So this was Ryan and Paul Joan. And one of the key ideas here is the world is changing fast. This is a true fact, and we need to look at what we're going to do about that. Or in Wing Tai's summary, he said, is that predominantly an opportunity or predominantly a threat? So moving beyond zero impact, we had Casey Ho and Mak Chen Weng Ning. And I think one of the key ideas for this one was sustainable is just 100% less bad stuff. Right? Can we, should we, need we, must we do better than just not doing bad stuff? And the answer in the talk was yes, we need to do better than that. The global order of business. So this is the last session with Peter who's just had to slip out, and T. And one of the key ideas. This is my take. This is the phrase I liked from this, and there was a lot of stuff covered. But walking with the idea that with globalization, with the way things change, you've got this huge disparity between the sort of the big guys and the little guys, between the guy on the shop floor and Jeff Bezos. But this idea of the importance of walking with people, being prepared to slow down just because walking with them is more important often than walking fast. And finally, Un-commodifying the World, which you've all been present for. And that essentially is looking at, and I gave these slides before I'd seen Wing Tai's talk, so I'm pleased that this roughly fits. Resisting transformation into objects of trade. So this is the last 5 sessions, and now I get to try and put some overarching story on this. Now, it goes without saying that these sessions had a broad-ranging subject matter. Some were more looking at technology, some were more looking at business, some were looking at all sorts of things. Some people were more optimistic about the role of technology, some were more pessimistic, some were more ambivalent. Not all of our speakers agreed with each other on everything, so to now have to put together an overview is going to be fun, but I'll try and do it justice. Now, one thing that's worth saying here is when we were putting this together, and when I've been talking to people about it, quite a few people have said to me. Fortunately, no one's actually attended any of the talks, but quite a few people have said to me, "Well, that sounds kind of fun, but it's a real shame that Fastcore is involved. It's a shame that we're involved." I said, well, because you're supposed to be doing faith and science, and it's such a shame that this has nothing to do with science. Fortunately, there was some question mark over whether it had anything to do with faith, business, but it has nothing to do with science, right? And to clarify this point, because I think it's an important point, and I would hate to have managed to get through the entire series and for this point to have been missed. And this is what I'm going to hang this overarching story on. And I'm going to take the sort of inspiration from this from people like Jacques Ellul and Neil Postman for each of the sessions. Side tangent. For each of the sessions, you've been given recommended reading from various books, and you've all diligently gone away and done your reading. We also gave, do you have a reading list? Does someone have a reading list like in the Wave? I gave a fresh, up-to-date reading list this session, because we have been adding to it as we go along. No? There you go. Right, so for those of you that don't have this one, because the printer kind of failed, it's online, it's on the website. So there's the recommended readings, but there's also like a big reading list of things should you be interested to read 20 books over your summer. And there's 1 or 2 during this summary that I'm going to flag from the sort of extended reading list. Thank you. And so one is Jacques Ellul, The Technological Society, one is Neil Postman, Technopoly. And so taking ideas from these guys, the key idea that I think is important for binding all these different topics together is that technology is not about things. You go, well, that's a piece of technology, that's a thing. This is a piece of technology, this is a thing. Right? How is technology not about things? And the key to saying that there's something where it's not about things was a comment that Wing Tai made during the session where he was talking about ranking of institutions, where he said a ranking is a technology. And if we're thinking that technology is things, this might give us pause to say, no, it's not, it's just a list that you put in order. How is a list that I put in order that I can do with pen and paper or chalk or a stick in the sand, how is that technology? And the answer is technology is not about things, technology is a logic. Technology is a way of seeing the world, a way of thinking. And so what I'm going to look now at is the logic of technology, and then tie that to the logic of business and see where that takes us. So here's the logic of technology. Technology is about function. You will never find a technological thing that doesn't have a use, a purpose, right? This is for clicking on things. This is for keeping my tea hot. This is for clicking on things. A piece of paper is a technology. It's for keeping track of what I need to say because my memory is not so good. Every technological thing has a function, right? Your phone camera is used for taking photos of sunsets. This is a technology. The sunset itself is not a technology. And it's not so clear what a sunset is for. Right? The world is full of things that don't have a function. What is a sunset for? But we know what a phone is for. A phone is for taking photos of sunsets. Right? Technology, not technology. Follows logic of technology, does not. Okay, once we've got a function, once we know it's for something, we can say, well, is it any good at it? Does it do it well? Does it do it efficiently? Do I get bang for my buck? Do I have to, sort of spend 6 hours setting up my tripod, or can I just whip my phone out of my pocket and click? Right? Technology follows a logical efficiency. We want to do things easily. Now, if you want to do things efficiently, it's pretty normal to say, well, an easy way of doing things efficiently is to standardize them, right? If I want to get stuff efficiently from Hong Kong to Hamburg, right, I don't phone up whichever freight company and say, can you take my suitcase, right? I stick it in a crate, a container, right? And I don't say, I'd like my container to be 4 feet high. They say, you take the standard container, because we can stack them, right? That's efficient. If they had to stack all the containers of different sizes, like they used to, it's very inefficient. They have to try and work out how to pack them. And when you've got all your standardized containers, you do your standardized size ship, and you bring it into a standardized dock where you've got one of 20 standardized shipping cranes to choose from, right? If every shipping crane was a different size, and every dock was a different depth, and we standardize things because that's efficient. And we want to do it efficiently because it's got a function. Quite a few of these keywords I'm going to list now have actually been mentioned during the first talk today. I was quite pleased how many of them came out in the conversation. I sort of noticed them as they went, like, oh, good. And they've also come out through the entire series, and I'll flag those later. Once you've standardized it, you want to say, well, can we quantify that? We say it's efficient, but how efficient? Is it more efficient or less efficient? How much? Can we time it? Can we measure it? Because if you can't measure it, you can't say how efficient it is. If it takes 20 seconds to take a photo by one method and 10 seconds to take a photo by another method, then you can say this is the efficiency. Right? But if you can't measure it, if you can't quantify it, you can't say whether or not it's efficient, you can't say whether or not it fulfills its function. So the logic of technology requires measurement, quantification. And this quantification necessarily strips out quality. Which is not to say if things that are quantified have no quality, it's just that it doesn't care about the quality. Right? From education, you say, I have a master's. Right? I got this many points, I got this many, this was my GPA. Right? We have something I can quantify my GPA. I can quantify how many courses I sat, how many contact hours I had. Right? But if you say, did you get anything from it? If I can't quantify that, if I can't, it changed my life, it opened my mind, I left a happier person. If I can't quantify it, it doesn't count. So this quantification necessarily strips out qualitative aspects, because you can't compare those. Okay, improvement. Once we've got the efficiency through our standardization, which we know by our quantification, you now say, well, that's nice, but can I make it better? Right? The phone's great if it's got a 1 hour battery life, but can I have a 2 hour battery life? The phone's great if it's this big, but can I make it this big, right? We take something that we want to improve, and obviously the thing that we want to improve is the thing that we've just measured, right? You don't say, I want to make you happier, because you can't measure happiness, or if you do measure happiness, you put it on some quantifiable scale. Right? The only thing that you can improve in the logic of technology is the thing that you can quantify. And then we take our quantified metric and we try and improve it. And it's not just, is it getting better, but how fast is it getting better? Is it getting better faster than it would have done had I not done anything? Is it getting better faster than everyone else's thing is getting better? This, for example, for those that don't know, is Moore's law, stretching from 1900 to 2019. 120 years of development from mechanical switches, relays, vacuum tubes, transistors, integrated circuits. That's absolutely unbelievable that we're still going on Moore's law. This is a factor of a billion difference in the number of calculations per second per constant dot, because we need to quantify it. And finally, a word that also came up in the previous session, totalization. The logic of technology is a logic of totalization. In the words of Postman, I believe, technology is the most jealous of gods. It does not brook any possibility or challenge from anyone else, right? If what you're doing doesn't fit within this, if you say I have a thing but it doesn't particularly have a function, well, I'm sorry, we're not interested. If you have a thing but it's not standardized, if it doesn't fit within the box, I'm sorry, we're not interested. If you say it's great but I can't put a number to how great it is, I'm sorry, we're not interested. If you say, well, it applies to some things, but there are some aspects of my life that this quantification, this standardization, this constant desire for improvement doesn't fit into, they say, well, those bits of your life clearly don't matter. Your wife isn't constantly improving? Well, frankly, your relationship with your children isn't constantly improving. The number of friends you're having isn't constantly growing. If you cannot measure these things, I'm sorry, it's not important. Because technology is totalizing. And once we've realized that we can assign a value, a numerical, objective value to things, we do it to everyone. Which is to say we do it to everything and to everyone, thanks to Chinese government. This is the logic of technology. We apply ranking to our universities. A ranking which has a function. You can pretend to yourself that you've worked out which university is better than the other. It has an efficiency. It's much easier to look at a ranking and say we're ranked 37th than to actually go out and find out whether the university does what you want it to. It's standardized because everyone follows the same ranking rules. It's quantified. We stick a number on our university. You always want to go up in the rankings, and the rankings agencies are always trying to make their rankings better, right? Ranking, and it's totalizing. The only thing that matters is your university rank. It doesn't matter if your university's suicide rates go up. As long as the ranking doesn't take those into account, because right, ranking is, for universities, totalizing. Ranking is a technology, not because it's an artifact, but because it follows the logic of technology. I'm seeing 12 really, really worried faces in this room. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, just out of interest, we're going to start waiting because they need to sit down. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, so we now understand a technological age. A technological age is an age driven by worshipping the logic of technology. A technological age is an age where we've almost lost sight of the fact that there is any logic beyond a technological logic. And now we say, in this age, what does business look like? So now I'm going to go through the last 5 sessions and I'm going to frame 5 talks using this logic. This isn't exactly how everyone's framed it, but I will draw out some key themes, and I'll leave it as an exercise for the reader to go away and rewatch the videos and go, oh look, ding, 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 ding. Should you have an afternoon and nothing to do. So here we go. And I'm going to draw here, again, this is on your reading list, I'm going to draw here from a book by Craig Gay, Cash Values, which really draws out the parallels between the philosophy of technology and the philosophy of finance. So, session 1. Okay, increasing income per person. Okay, quantification, yes. We're going to quantify money. Specifically, we're going to quantify GDP. And just to make it nice and standard, we're going to quantify GDP per capita. So we've standardized it, right? Specifically, we've got the real GDP per capita measured using US dollars, inflation adjusted for prices of 2001 with multiple benchmarks allowing for cross-country income comparisons. Right? This is standardized. We have a standardized GDP so that we can make comparisons, because comparisons are important. And we can improve our GDP. An improved GDP is a higher GDP, and look, good. And the important thing is not that it's getting better, but how fast it's getting better. Right? This is okay. This is good. This is awesome. Right? The important thing is not, is your GDP good or is your GDP improving, but is your GDP improving faster than everyone else's GDP? Okay, and if your GDP is not improving faster than everyone else's GDP, you need to make efficiencies. Where efficiencies means sack the useless workers. Right, now here we see we are serving GDP. Right? If you have a choice between being humane to someone and raising your GDP, and you're in government, you raise your GDP. Right? If you have the choice between raising your company's stock price and paying your workers more, if the thing you are measuring is your stock price, you screw over your workers. Okay? So we make efficiencies, because worker happiness is not easily measurable, so it doesn't count in our efficiency, and as we know, GDP is totalizing. This is the only thing that matters about the country. Who cares if your government is corrupt? Who cares if you have human rights violations? As long as your GDP is going up, we're all good. And this then tells us, coming back to the sort of one-sentence summary, this then tells us about function, particularly our function. Right? I appear on this as a per capita. I am included simply as the denominator in the calculation of GDP. I'm just the thing by which it gets standardized. My function is to make sure this keeps on going up. Right? I serve GDP, not the other way around. My function is as an economic agent. So we can quite clearly see that the logic of technology totally runs through business. So when we talk about the future of business in the technological age, you cannot change this without somehow disabusing the world of a technological idolatry. I'm going to go through a bit quicker now just because, so this, everything's yellow here. I don't need to belabor the point, but I'll just show some highlights from different talks. Okay, so Erwin, by the time you graduate, your job won't, I think his phrase was, the top job by the time you graduate won't have existed at the time you entered university. This is the rate of improvement. I put improvement there in scare quotes because it's not necessarily clear what we're improving. Okay. Taking some of the things that Paul said. Paul looked at the purpose of education among various things. Again, compressing lots of talks into a very short thing. So he said from UNESCO, learning to be, learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together. And this here starts to give us pause on some of these. Okay, learning to be. I am. Right? What's my function? No. I'm just being. Right? The notion of being as an end in itself starts to kick against the goad of the necessity of function. Learning to know. Okay, my 5-year-old son the other day had a very important learning experience. He learned that when you find a cigarette lighter on the street, if you pick it up, you don't pick it up, push the button and stick your thumb in it to see what happens. As learning experiences go, this was an efficient learning experience. He learned fast, and he learned well. Right? But if we're learning to know, is efficiency really what we're after? Okay, learning to do. Standardization. Okay, when I learn to do something with Sophie, what I need to learn is not the same as when Sophie's learning to do exactly the same thing with me. Right? Our learning cannot be standardized because my context is different from her context. My context is working with her. Her context is working with me. Right? So the notion of learning to do kicks against standardization. Learning to live. Let's quantify that. I lived for 39 years. Wing Tai lived for longer than 39 years, therefore he's learned to live better than me because more. Right? Quantification rather than quality. Any qualitative notions of learning to live have to fall out of the technological logic. So the purpose of education somehow kicks against the logic of technology, which at least gives us pause for thought when looking at how technology and education interact. Okay, moving on. Beyond zero impact. Key one here, and so this is a slide from Kirsty Hope. Now this is economic development, right? This is ecological environmental protection. This is social development, and the thing you will see here, the reason why this slide is totally radical, and this is so viewing things through a technological lens makes us aware that some things are really radical and some things are kind of standard. This slide is radical, and the reason is economic development is only part of it. If we've said from the beginning, from talk 1, that business is thoroughly run through with a logic of technology, then business should be totalizing, which we know most of the time to be true. Business thinking, business mindsets should be totalizing. And to put a thing here that says economic development is not the only thing that counts, this is radical. And when the world kicks against this picture, the reason they kick against this picture is because we have just dethroned business as a totalizing thing. So moving on to some slides from Max and Wending. So for those of you who were here, you may remember Via Organica. There was a village where previously they'd got a cash crop of coffee beans, they made loads of coffee beans, they sold it to America or to Europe, and Americans and Europeans drank lots of coffee, and people in this particular village, if they didn't want to drink coffee, had to take the money they just got from their coffee beans and buy hamburgers with it. And they said, how are we making this world-class product and we're sitting here eating hamburgers? So, if every single person in the village is making coffee, you've got this wonderful standardization, right? You've got this wonderful efficiency because you just plant coffee beans, the coffee beans come up. It's wonderful. And they said, we're going to deconstruct the logic of technology here. So for those of you who are thinking, what has organic farming got to do with technology? They are here deconstructing the logic of technology. They're saying technology would say standardization, efficiency, and we say that there are other things we are going for. Yes, and so for the standardization, because standardizing so that everyone has coffee is great unless someone walks into a shop and says, I'd like to buy a lemon, a cucumber, and a tomato, please. Because only having coffee available, while wonderful by the logic of technology, is not wonderful by a human logic that says, I like eating a varied diet that doesn't consist of 100% coffee. Global order of business. So, Jeff Bezos, a man whose name has come up multiple times today. Totalization. I don't need to belabor this point. Amazon will sell it to you. If you want to buy something, Amazon sells it. Efficiency. They have this efficiency of scale. They very carefully think through time and motion studies, making the way everything works. They want to be as efficient as possible. So that's true for Amazon. Let's look at farming. So again, we have efficiency here. We take the seed and the fertilizer and the herbicides, we give it all to Monsanto, so that rather than having multiple people around you, have one big multinational that just does it for you. This is efficient. And for those of you who are now seeing where this is coming, and were here last week, you say, but not quite. Not quite, look. Because while farming for the seeds with Monsanto, the logic of technology pushes towards efficiency, what about Peter's objection to overconsumption of meat? Mm-hmm. Right? You put piles and piles of grain into a cow, and you get not much cow out of the end. Right? This is really inefficient. The efficient thing to do is to eat the grain. The inefficient thing to do is to eat the cow. So somehow this globalization is now pushing against efficiency. So Michael Graham theory of serving technological logic is flawed. I say it is not, and here is why. Efficiency comes by the thing that we are quantifying, the thing that we are measuring. If you are measuring dollars earned per hectare, cows are efficient. If you are measuring calories produced per hectare, cows are inefficient. And business does not measure calories produced per hectare. It doesn't care because calories per hectare does not increase shareholder value. Right? We have quantification and we only care about the thing we quantify, and that, particularly in this case money or shareholder value, is totalizing. We can come up with insane inefficiencies, and you can say this is inefficient, this is nuts, but the reason why we get away with these inefficiencies is because they're inefficient by a metric about which business does not care. Okay, so now I wish. So Peter didn't have time to give his entire talk. We cut him off about a third of the way through. But the latter half of the talk, for those of you who had time to go through the slides, he starts to go through and look at some of the solutions to the problems he raised in the opening section. And the really nice thing when I was preparing this is the solutions that he goes through basically fall into the category of saying, one by one, which of these things, which of these technological logics do we want to kick against? Which one do we want to unpick? Right? So for the cows, we say, we're going to kick against the thing that you are quantifying because you're trying to be efficient in an unhelpful thing. So here we say, okay, why is the system bad? It's not just the money, it's the pursuit of economic growth has become the only goal of society. So the thing we're kicking against here to identify the problem is totalization. Businesses do not exist for their own sake, but for a specific social purpose. So we have that wider thing. Now, without going through the next 2 hours of these slides, you can go through it yourself if you want, and you can look and you can say every single one of the solutions he suggests is to kick against the logic of technology. And so this is one of the reasons why it's really helpful to do this technology business thing, because it proposes to you ways of how the solution might come, because it proposes the framing of how the problem would occur. Okay, finally, technological logic of functional value. So again, we have the shining here. So when Tai commented on, for example, commodification of people, if the fetus is, by the metric you have, by the way you have quantified its genes, not as good as the one you would have wanted, you discard it. So we've commodified people. Right? Now, let's just critique this for a second on function. Right? Now, people look at children and they say this child is completely useless. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out children are not designed to be useful. Right? Children are not for something. Right? You don't say, well, this child is a waste of space. I mean, in Hong Kong you do. But the reason this is a problem is because for a child to be a waste of space assumes that a child should be useful for something. It assumes a child has a function. To assume that this child is a good child because it's useful and this child is not a good child because it's not useful, because it doesn't read or write as well, because it doesn't run as fast, because it runs too fast, because it's never going to go and win a Nobel Prize. I don't need to belabor the point that children are not for anything. This is the notion of learning to be. So here, Un-commodifying the World, and again, we could unpick this. I tried not to in the discussion time because I was going to have this in. But in answer to the question of how you uncommodify, for example, at university, I would suggest you go through every single one of these titles and you say, for my university, how can I kick against this? How can I kick against the notion that my education should be functional? Can I kick against the idea it should be utile, or efficient, or standardized, or quantifiable? Why is it that universities don't give us quantifications, but they give us qualifications? When the logic of technology strips out quality and replaces it with quantity. Right? We should have, I got a great quantification. And ranking and grades and GPA is a quantification. But universities should be giving us qualifications. So we can kick against this, and so on and so forth. Okay, so closing remarks. To sum up, because I'm running out of time. Okay, technology is a logic. The logic of business often seems like it goes hand in hand with the logic of technology. This is not just simply that we say, oh, you know, faster internet or a new phone or better plane flights or whatever, the technology helps us in business or it gives us a new thing to sell. The logic of technology undergirds the way we think about business. Uncritically accepting this connection is problematic. I was slightly more circumspect here, often causes problems. I'm just saying it is problematic. And the good news is, and this is what the last 5 months have tried to do, and going forward maybe what I hope we have instilled in you as a thought and a framework for thinking, is to say that Christian reflection upon the relationship between business and technology can be beneficial. And again, this is a slightly understated thing for do this. Do this. Okay.
Serve a function.
It is good.
It's good.
Functional or no, it is good. Okay, and the final thing which I'll just throw up is, for those of you who have missed any of these sessions, all of the slides, all of the materials, all of the reading lists, all of the whole lot is on the website. So go visit the website, you can put it all down and catch on anything you missed. So with that, I shall just refer to those, and Peter, thank you very much.